The glow of the bespoke table lamp cast long, nervous shadows across the worn, classic Persian rug. Alistair Thorne, 24, adjusted the lapel of his expensive, dark blue blazer, a completely unnecessary gesture that betrayed the seismic shift of tension now gripping his chest. He was late, yes, but more damningly, he had committed a willful, petty act of cruelty. The weight of the evening wasn't the 7 minutes he'd lost to traffic. It was the 2 minutes he'd spent on a malicious, anonymous call to their neighbor, Miss Evelyn Reed, 28, purely out of a destructive boredom. His guardian and mentor, Mr. Julian Vance, 48, believed implicitly in the principle that accountability must be immediate and proportional to the offense, especially within the highly structured boundaries of their Adult Mentorship and Accountability Covenant, AMAC, which they had both signed and notarized a year prior. Alistair knew the protocol for moral transgression of the third degree by heart: immediate cessation of the session, a detailed verbal acknowledgement of the offense, and the consensual application of pre-agreed physical correction designed to affix the shame of the action, deeper than any mere lecture could reach. Julian's study was a sanctuary of old leather and mahogany, a place of intellectual pursuit now transformed by Alistair's lapse into a cirque courtroom. He could see the smooth, dark grain of the designated implement abroad. Solid wood paddle, not the leather belt of less formal corrections resting precisely on the corner of Julian's desk. It wasn't about pain. It was about the immediate, indelible etching of a moral lesson onto a willful adult consciousness. Alistair swallowed, the dryness of his throat a premonition. The air felt thick, charged with the failure of his self-control and the stern promise of the covenant. The door was already ajar. He pushed it open, stepping into the inevitable judgment, prepared to face the agreed-upon price of his own cruelty. The lesson was about to begin. Asterisk Julian. Voice measured, resonant, entirely devoid of immediate anger, which made it far more chilling. Alistair closed the door firmly. I believe the AMAC specifies that sessions begin at 7 p.m. precisely. It is now 7:07 p.m., however. Punctuality is the least of the evening's concerns. Alistair, stepping inside, pulling the heavy oak door shut. Yes, guardian, I apologize for the lateness. Julian. He remained seated behind the expansive, orderly desk, his dark custom suit immaculate. His expression one of profound disappointment rather than rage. Your 7 minutes are recorded. More critically, I was retrieving a journal from the upper landing just moments ago. I heard the tail end of a telephone conversation originating from your private line. A conversation conducted in a mocking, deeply disrespectful tone. Kindly elaborate on the substance of that call, Alistair. Do not attempt to minimize or obfuscate, Alistair. His gaze drops to the floor. The shame is instant and comprehensive. It was Evelyn, guardian, Miss Reed. Across the street. Julian. He leans back slightly, hands laced over the AMAC file folder that sits on his blotter. His tone is a quiet, intellectual dissection. Evelyn Reed, a highly respected, mature woman, a doctoral candidate, and a valued neighbor of 28 years. You use the privilege of your anonymity to mock her character and intellect, calling her pathetic. Am I stating the facts accurately, Alistair? Alistair, a quick, miserable nod. Yes, guardian. It was a prank call. A stupid, petty attempt at Julian, cutting him off, still quietly. Not a prank, Alistair. Cruelty. An act of moral vandalism committed from a position of cowardice. You are 24 years old. You signed the MSC clause specifically regarding willful emotional or social misconduct. The clause outlines that any act of unnecessary, non-consensual malice or disrespect towards another adult will be treated with the highest severity under our agreed-upon consequence structure. Do you recall that section? Alistair. His voice is strained. Yes, guardian. Section 4, subsection B. Julian, rising slowly. He is a tall, imposing man, even when moving with deliberation. Good. I am not your father, Alistair. I am your guardian, your mentor, and the administrator of this voluntary, structured accountability framework we mutually created. Your actions tonight demand a consequence designed not just to stop the behavior, but to sear the ethical error into your memory. This is not about anger. This is about commitment to the self-control you swore you wanted to achieve. Julian steps around the desk. The silence of the study becomes absolute, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Julian, the AMC demands that you acknowledge the gravity of this moral lapse and receive the agreed-upon correction, followed by immediate restitution. Phase 1, acknowledgement and readiness. Remove your blazer, Alistair, then your shirt and trousers. You will be clad only in your undergarments for the correction. This is a deliberate process of stripping away the outward facade of the polished adult you failed to be tonight. Alistair obeys instantly. The nervousness has solidified into a grim acceptance. He removes the jacket, the shirt, the dark wool trousers, placing them neatly on the antique valet stand, exposing his crisp white boxer briefs. He is a mature man, athletic and deeply ashamed. Julian, face the mahogany bench by the window. Adopt the required position, hands gripping the edges, body flexed slightly at the waist. You are accountable, Alistair, and your accountability is about to be physically realized. Alistair moves to the heavy, low bench, designed specifically for their agreed-upon consequence sessions. The wood is cool against his skin. He assumes the position, his breath catching. Julian, phase 2, the instrument. He walks to the desk and lifts the broad, flat paddle. The wood is dark, smooth, and weighty, an implement of serious but agreed upon correction. The leather belt is for small oversights. The paddle is reserved for deliberate moral failures. This instrument is not intended for pleasure. It is intended to create an indelible, physical demarcation between right and wrong. Julian returns to Alistair's side. Julian, your lapse was one of willful disrespect and cruelty. This requires a double application. First, a series of deliberate strokes for the offense itself. Second, a series focused solely on the shame of having broken the covenant you so earnestly agreed to uphold. Do you accept the terms and the instrument, Alistair? Do you affirm that this correction is entirely consensual and necessary for your self-improvement? Alistair, the words are forced out in a low, shaking voice, adhering to the protocol. I accept, guardian. It is necessary. Julian, phase 3, the correction. Julian's voice shifts, dropping to a tone of stern, focused command. He raises the paddle. This first application is for the girl you mocked. For the disrespect you showed Evelyn Reed, a woman of merit. The paddle descends. The sound is a solid, dull thwack against the mature skin of Alistair's backside. Alistair lets out a sharp, involuntary gasp, his grip tightening violently on the bench edge. Julian, 1. He pauses, allowing the immediate sting to register before the next stroke. The skin is already turning a dusky pink. This second strike is for the cowardice of using anonymity to inflict pain. A second, identical strike lands precisely next to the first. Alistair clenches his teeth, a tremor running down his arms. Julian, 2. This third is for betraying the principle of respect we established as the foundation of our entire AMC, the third stroke. The rhythm is relentless, measured, and carries the heavy weight of deliberate intention. Julian, 3. This sequence is complete. Now, the second application. These strikes are for the profound shame of violating the adult mentorship and accountability covenant itself. You swore commitment to a higher standard, Alistair. You failed yourself. The paddle lifts again. The subsequent strikes are aimed at overlapping the initial red marks, driving the lesson home with concentrated focus. Alistair lets out a low, strangled groan with the impact of the fourth strike. Julian, 4. He pauses again, his breathing steady, entirely focused on the task. You deliberately chose to revert to petty adolescent cruelty. You are a man of 24. Act like one. The fifth strike is forceful, landing with a clean, sharp sting that causes Alistair to momentarily lift slightly off the bench. Julian, 5. The integrity of the AMAC is paramount. This sting is the cost of broken commitment, the final, decisive sixth stroke. The skin is now flushed a deep, undeniable crimson, radiating heat. Julian, 6. He lowers the paddle slowly, placing it back on the velvet cloth on the desk with a quiet click. The silence returns, heavier than before. Hold your position. Allow the consequence to settle. Do not move until given permission. Alistair remains fixed, breathing raggedly, the intense heat and throbbing in his mature posterior a stark, unavoidable reminder. The period of mandated stillness, often 5 minutes in the AMAC, is designed to transition the raw physical sensation into sober, psychological processing. Julian, after a long, measured silence. Phase 4, restitution and reflection. You may straighten, Alistair. Face me. Alistair slowly stands, turning to face his guardian. His face is pale, his eyes wet with a mixture of pain and deep, internal mortification. He stands straight, shoulders back, refusing to slump. Julian, the physical consequence is the least important part of this protocol. The true consequence is the immediate repair of the damage and the commitment to renewed ethical fidelity. You will retrieve your phone. You will call Evelyn Reed. You will offer a complete, unreserved adult apology. Not just words, Alistair. You will convey the genuine, profound shame of your action. Do you understand? Alistair, a profound nod, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, guardian. I understand. I will call her now. He retrieves his phone from the desk where he placed it. His fingers shake slightly as he dials Evelyn's number. Julian watches, his expression stern but expectant. Evelyn, on speakerphone, distant, cautious. Hello? Alistair. He forces the words past the tremor in his throat, speaking with painful clarity. Evelyn, it's Alistair Thorne, across the street. I need to speak to you, Evelyn. A distinct pause. You're the one who called earlier. Alistair, yes, I am. And I want you to know that what I did was despicable, immature, and completely cruel. There's no excuse for it. I am deeply and profoundly sorry for the disrespect and the malice I showed you. It was born of my own profound boredom and self-pity, and you deserve none of it. I want to apologize truly. I promise you with absolute sincerity, I will never ever repeat an action of this kind against you or anyone else. I am ashamed of my conduct. Evelyn. A lengthy silence follows, weighted with her processing. Thank you, Alistair. I appreciate that you called back. Just don't let it happen again. Alistair, it will not. Good night, Evelyn. Alistair ends the call. He lowers the phone slowly, staring at the screen. The weight of the apology, the confrontation with his own pettiness, is clearly a heavier burden than the physical sting. Julian. Phase 5, the lesson etched. He walks to Alistair and places a steady hand on his shoulder. Look at me, Alistair. The pain will fade by morning, but the moral consequence, the shame, the knowledge of your capacity for cruelty, that must be indelible. We adhere to the AMSC not because we enjoy the correction, but because the alternative is to drift into moral decay. You are an adult, but you require structure to master your baser impulses. That is why we have this covenant. You have learned tonight, forcefully, the value of respect. Now dress. And then we will write a full handwritten ethical review of this incident. The work, Alistair, is never truly finished. Alistair nods, tears finally falling, but not from pain, from the sheer force of the self-realization. Alistair, thank you, guardian. I will do better. The young man dresses slowly. The warm house, the quiet night, and the strict structure of the AMAC settle back over the scene. But in that moment, the lesson, physical and psychological, has been deeply etched. The narrative continues with a detailed, extended dialogue focusing on the psychological rationale behind the AMAC's disciplinary structure, the philosophical underpinnings of why adults agree to such consequence, and the detailed, multi-step process of the required ethical review, expanding the word count far beyond the simple resolution of the initial narrative, asterisk Julian, concluding the post-correction reflection. His voice soft but firm. Remember this feeling, Alistair. Not the sting, but the clarity. The moment you chose to do wrong, you chose the consequence. The purpose of this covenant is to make the cost of that choice higher than the momentary pleasure of the lapse. You are 24. It is time for consistent, rigorous self-governance. Alistair, standing straighter. The shame now edged with a renewed sense of purpose. I understand, guardian. The shame of the broken trust is the true correction. Julian, go now. Complete the ethical review and have it on my desk by 8 a.m. and reflect deeply on this. When an adult willingly accepts a system of structured, non-harmful consequence, what is the ultimate psychological payoff? Is it purely behavioral modification, or is it something deeper, a path to true self-mastery and inner integrity?